You have reached the deepest depths of the internet. If it is greatness you seek, you've come to the wrong show. If it's about not wasting time, don't worry, you're never going to get your time back. If it's knowledge you seek, just be aware, any knowledge gained here is going to be minuscule. So now it's time for Accost the Field with Tony Gerdeman on the Ozone Radio Network.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Across the Field. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr and our producer Shannon Sommers. Shannon, how are you doing?
If I have a box of Kleenex, I should be fine for the rest of the day.
Too many ways. How are you doing?
I'm good. If you heard Gerd pause at the beginning, he just wasn't sure if one of us had transferred to a different podcast.
You know, we had a decent show planned for today, and I'm holding the rundown here right now, and I'll just, that's about where that show goes. Because there's big transfer news.
Why?
On Tuesday that Matthew Burrell has landed at Sam Houston State. He's finally decided on where he would here. He didn't want to sit out a year, so he went the FCS route and will be at Sam Houston State next year. So we're all rooting for him to do well there, and I think he will. Kind of lost in the Burrell transfer news was then the Joe Burrow transfer news.
Who?
He's a quarterback. Hasn't played a lot. Fourth year junior. So yeah, he's announced his transfer, and we can all sort of move on with our lives. But first, we have to realign our lives into a hyper focus with the situation as it stands. And I've sort of envied the Smithcast guys for their position in the podcast slot with the Monday position, because they get to stuff that happened, and they're the first to do it. But Tom, I'm kind of chuckling a little bit because they're going to have to wait a whole week to talk about the biggest Ohio State story going on right now, and it's the one we've all been waiting for. Joe Burrow has announced his transfer, and now here we are, and we can finally get on with it, talk about it. It's a real thing, and now we deal with it.
Yeah, I really appreciate him waiting until we had squeezed every possible story angle out of the quarterback battle before announcing it, and now we have a whole bunch of new quarterback story angles that we can write about during the offseason. So, I mean, that was, some people are going to say he timed it to coincide with OSU graduation. I think he probably looked in our story queue and went, okay, they've written all 37 possible variations on this story. Now it's time to give him some fresh material. I really appreciate his consideration in that.
Yep, and for that, I wish him well, wherever it may be. To sort of rejuvenate our ability to write about the same position, just now with different people, different angles, and different results. And, I was thinking about it. This is almost like waiting for this to come down. Reminded me of when I was a kid coming home from school every day, and the standoff in Waco was still going on. This was Ohio State's Waco, and it ends much more peacefully, which is good. The stuff on Twitter.
Are you predicting he's going to transfer to Baylor? Is that what I'm hearing?
But it was good to see his teammates on Twitter reaching out to him, supporting him. Not that we would expect anything else, but this whole thing started on Twitter. I think Monday or Sunday, when Joe Burrow's dad, Jimmy Burrow, coordinator at Ohio, tweeted the picture of mom and dad and Joe after graduation, saying, preparing for the good luck on your next challenge or whatever. And you see that kind of tweet, and it's impossible not to make something of that. And what we made of it was that the next challenge isn't at Ohio State, obviously. Not obviously, but that would be the same challenge he had before graduation. So this next challenge, that was sort of the first cat out of the first bag. And now we're here. And Tom, we've talked about this in the past. What do you think the conversation was like between Joe and Urban? Because I'm thinking it's whatever it was. Obviously, it wasn't what Joe wanted to hear, but I don't think he could have told him what he wanted to hear, because I don't think that's a realistic answer.
Yeah, I think coming out of spring ball, we all had the sense that it was probably a pretty close competition, and that if Urban wanted to tell him that, you're a little ahead, but I can't guarantee you the starting job, that's probably about right. It was probably somewhere in that neighborhood, and that's probably roughly what he heard. I can't imagine he was told, nope, this is Dwayne Haskins' job, and you have no chance to win it, so you'd better leave. Because that, first of all, I don't think would be representative of what we saw and heard all spring. And also, it's not in Urban Meyer's best interest to say that and to chase him off. You want to have an extra healthy scholarship quarterback this fall. So I would have to imagine that he was told at least, it's 50-50. It's close. We're going to take it into fall camp. I can't guarantee you've got the starting job, but, it's close, or maybe you're a little ahead. And that may not have been enough for him. Well, obviously it wasn't enough for him, whatever it was that he was told. You talked about his dad being kind of the first tip-off, the tweet that he said, and he said, on to the next thing, which I looked at and thought, well, that probably is a pretty good indication, but you never know if you're reading too much into things. But it's like when Burrow said a couple times, once after the spring game, once after the Cotton Bowl, he said, I want to be the starting quarterback somewhere. And he used that word twice, 4 months apart. So that was obviously the word that he, somewhere is where he wants to be the starting quarterback. And it wasn't, he wanted to be at Ohio State, but being the starting quarterback was the most important thing to him. So, I think we spent lots of months trying to read the tea leaves with him on what, when he said somewhere, how much did he really mean that? And, then you're trying to read the tea leaves on to the next thing, what that really means. Does he really mean the next different thing, different place? And then today we got our answer, and the answer was, yep, they all meant exactly what we were thinking they meant.
To me, I think it was an open secret with the team, or even not a secret, but because I don't know if I mentioned it here. I know I posted a message board, but like before the spring, one of the people I was talking to said that, very matter of factly, like Antonio Williams is likely going to transfer, and then even more so, like, yeah, Joe Burrow is going to transfer, but he's transferring. Not he's going to transfer, he's transferring. And this is a person who doesn't know all of the players. He interacts with people and is almost clinical in what he there's no emotional attachment. And so he speaks like, he doesn't know the impact of necessarily of what that means. Like, this guy said this, he's going to do this. And so you go through this spring and, like we did with Antonio Williams, he has a good spring, but it doesn't matter. His mind was made up, the North Carolina graphics and everything. Like, the day after spring ball, he's already in Chapel Hill practically. I don't know that this was much different, other than the fact that maybe he's not 100% sure where he's going. I bet he has a pretty good idea. But there was never, it never seemed like that this was the place, or that, and I'm rambling, I know, because the sound has been crazy. But could have told him to keep him, in my opinion, short of lying to him and saying the job is yours. And that's not something that he would do. That's not something that Ryan Day had any intention of doing because the job was going to be won in the fall, regardless of what happened this spring. I don't think there's really anything that Meyer could have told him given this result, because it seems to me that this was always the way he was leaning after the fact. Now, you look at the way he practiced, and he didn't look like he had one foot out the door at all. But, the way that things turned out, it was an easier choice for him, I guess. And maybe the one that made the most sense for him if he really wants to start, because he's not going to be guaranteed that year, and he wasn't going to be guaranteed that year. So I don't know what Urban Meyer could have told him. Shannon, I'll just ask you, how you doing?
I'm extremely sad. I'm extremely, heartbroken. I think I'm just going to sit with an Adele record in a corner and box of Kleenexes and just wipe my tears away, so that way I can clearly illustrate exactly how sad I am.
You're an Adele guy, huh?
Well, no, I just figured maybe something. I'm really not familiar with sad music, so I mean, I was the chairman of the Joe Burrows for quarterback of 2018 at Ohio State, and I don't know what else I have the champion for. I mean, Tom, let me ask you. You've championed for things that have been wrong. Is there a way to bounce back from this?
I think what we have to address is that Burrow almost undoubtedly transferred due to the disrespect of the chairman of his own fan club not knowing his own last name. It remains. It is and remains Joe Burrow, singular.
No, not anymore.
Plural.
Not anymore. No.
You know what? Maybe with that kind of disrespect, maybe he's transferring to Michigan State because they know how to play the disrespect card up there.
I finally started saying his name right, and then he goes and does this to me. So no, it's Joe Burrows.
Yeah, I don't think Michigan State's a good place for him because they have Brian Lewis in East
Poor Shannon's. He's so sad.
While Michigan State is not one of the possible destinations, Andy Staples or Bruce Feldman, I think it was Andy Staples, reported that LSU and Cincinnati have been granted permission to talk to Joe Burrow, and Cincinnati was one that everybody expected. But that's also where quarterbacks go to die. So I don't know if there's plenty of talent around him, but you don't really hear from the quarterbacks once they go there. I don't know. Are they all buried in the backyard somewhere down in Baton Rouge?
So you're saying they're the Browns of the college football SEC?
No, the Browns are. But there's also the connection we've talked quite a bit about Nebraska because of the whole family connection, and the Huskers need a quarterback. Ohio, his dad is a defensive coordinator there. I think that would be maybe the last. I wouldn't say last ditch, but maybe last choice, unless he just wants to go and play on the same team with his dad. Couldn't fault him for that. The one that makes a lot of sense, I think, is Florida with Dan Mullen running an offense that Joe Burrow is well accustomed to and would be more than willing to do, and where there is also plenty of talent around there, maybe not as much as has been in the past, certainly not as much as when Urban Meyer was there. I don't know, Tom, do you have a favorite fit for him or where you think he would do best? Even maybe one of those teams we didn't mention? No. And I think that would be pretty funny if he went there and State got beat out by Ohio State again.
Yeah, stole Wilton Spate's job at UCLA. That would be pretty great. Before we get to where he would be the best fit, I just want to point out, we just talked about how the LSU's where quarterbacks go to die. I couldn't remember. I knew they fired Matt Canada after last season, but I couldn't remember who their new offensive coordinator is, so I looked it up. It's Jay Ensminger, who was their old quarterbacks coach. And according to his official bio on LSUtigers.com or whatever their official site was, I'm just going to quote this directly. He is, quote, widely regarded for his development of quarterbacks, which seems generous, perhaps, a little aggressive, maybe. I mean, I guess it doesn't say he's widely regarded for his good development of quarterbacks.
Right.
Like, people look at his development of quarterbacks and go, "Whoa, that is a thing. That is a thing that you were doing. You were trying to develop those quarterbacks." So, LSU would be an interesting fit because it sounds like coming out of spring ball, they basically don't have a starting quarterback there, so he could just walk in and play there. I don't know what kind of offense they're looking to run there. I assume it's just kind of the standard Ed Orgeron man-ball-y kind of offense that they've been running for 10 years now. So I don't know if he's a great fit there. Cincinnati's one that you and I, Gerd, had talked about kind of offline at one point, and that makes a lot of sense. It's a good fit with Fickell. He knows Fickell. There's obviously a good connection with Urban Meyer and Fickell. Kind of the same thing with Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen at Florida. I think I would think there's probably, he's gonna give him a good recommendation on the way out the door and try and set him up for success wherever he goes, I would think. So yeah, landing somewhere where there's a coaching connection with Urban would make some sense to me. Ohio University, they have a returning quarterback. Cincinnati has a returning starter as well. I don't know if you're from Athens and your dad coaches there, and I'm sure leaving there felt like, yeah, I'm leaving this 2-horse town behind and I'm going to go play in the Big Ten. I don't know if you go back there, if that's kind of, admitting defeat in some way. So I would guess he would do something else, but Cincinnati has a starting quarterback back. I kind of think Florida or LSU might be a good fit. It kind of depends on his personality. Is he going to want to sort of push the issue and go to either Cincinnati or Nebraska and be at a place where he's going to play Ohio State, this year or next year? Because Nebraska obviously plays Ohio State this year and next year. Cincinnati plays Ohio State next year. Is he going to want to go someplace where he's going to have a chance to play Ohio State and kind of prove them wrong? Or is he going to want to go somewhere that's sort of a fresh start place like Florida or LSU, where there's not going to be that baggage, there's not going to be that kind of, that game in the horseshoe hanging, where he's going to come back and be on the opposing sidelines? That's kind of the interesting question to me.
I think playing at Ohio State, going through what you go through, you get this taste of, or this desire to win a national title. It's pounded into you, and it's something that you see others attain, and that's what you're shooting for. And when you fall short, it sucks, and you want to get back there even worse the next time. That's why, for me, the Florida and LSU would make the most sense. Maybe Florida more so, but I think it would be interesting to finally get a quarterback at LSU, and it'd be good wherever he goes. And maybe we're all wrong in that, but that's how I feel about him. But I think it would be good to get down there in the SEC. Maybe you can do something there to knock off Alabama, which would be a great help for Ohio State or any of the other programs that actually earn their way in and are just grandfathered in by West and having Nick Saban as your coach. I would like to see. I want to see him go somewhere where he can make an impact for the program, in terms of where you can win a national title or vie for one. Either that or go somewhere smaller where you can just light it up and just put up insane numbers and get your glory that way. I just don't know if that's what he wants at this point. But is he willing to give up on the desire for the opportunity to win a national title? And that's something that only he can answer. Not everybody, they'll say they want to, but that's really, really hard work. But he's a natural leader. He's a competitor. He's a battler. And Cincinnati would be a good fit. The quarterback they have here, they try to replace him whenever they can. But you can't win a national title there unless, UCF obviously did, so you can't say it's impossible, because UCF definitely did win a national title in the same conference. but I can't see the AAC winning a national title definitively 2 years in a row. So I would like to see him go somewhere and make an impact on a national scale.
Can I ask you a question real quick for both of you guys?
Yeah.
Now, I know we've talked about on the show before, and you guys made mention of Florida, and there seems to be a lot of chatter that's recently been picking up about Burrow to Florida possibly. But I've also heard the possibility of, say, like a Texas because of, Tim Beck and what's his name? I'm so great with names, but, they recruited him to Ohio State and was Ohio State quarterback coach for him. What are your guys' thoughts on him possibly going out to Texas?
I don't see that happening because they have young quarterbacks there. They've got a highly talented freshman coming in, and I believe they've got already another guy committed. So I think they're going to stand pat with what they have because you add another guy in there, and now you sort of thrown all of this into chaos, sort of like the chaos would want to maybe avoid if they had more quarterbacks on the roster, because Joe Burrow and Dwayne Haskins together might not have been a great mix throughout the season, just like we saw in 2015. And I don't know, Tom, about you. I don't think the connection there is Tom Herman, and that's great. And Tim Beck, they weren't always. Tim Beck and Joe Burrow had to come together again, had to reconcile. And I don't know that he would really be interested in Texas because they've got Ellinger, they've got other guys there, they got Bouchel. There's already a bunch of guys there who aren't getting as good as maybe they should. And Joe Burrow has already seen what it's like to be coached by Tim Beck, and maybe he didn't improve as much as he thought he should.
Yeah, we have to wait for Tom to jump back on. His phone overheated. But all right, as a just a joke here, but I mean, there's breaking news that Jim Harbaugh is speeding down 23 right now to see Burrow. I mean, what are the odds that he can go to Michigan for Mr. Harbaugh?
The interesting thing is when I was talking about the guy who told me that Burrow was going to transfer, that Antonio Williams was going to transfer, Michigan was one of the schools that he mentioned. And I don't know where that came from. It's not something that was mentioned in conversation that Michigan was a possibility. I didn't put it out there or anything because I don't ever see that happening. But especially now with Shea Patterson being granted immediate eligibility, there's no reason for Burrow to do that. But I was still pretty shocked when I heard them mention. But I don't know how serious. I don't think it was serious. That's just when you're throwing schools out there who are looking for quarterbacks. That's obviously Michigan is always looking for graduate transfers because Jim Harbaugh cannot do it on his own anymore. If he ever could, I mean, the one time he did, it's Andrew Luck, who was a generational talent. So I don't know how much credit we should be giving to Jim Harbaugh on that one. So then I wonder, should Urban block any destinations? And I think it's interesting that Cincinnati is not one of the programs who has been blocked, which makes me think that maybe there is no blocking of possible destinations, although I would still be surprised if he shows up at Nebraska or if Meyer would have. If he would, how Woody Hayes would be Notre Dame's best recruiter if a kid was down to Michigan or Notre Dame. Maybe this is one of those things where if Burrow is down to like LSU and Florida and Nebraska, he's like, well, look what Florida has. All of these. LSU has this defense here. So maybe you don't block anybody, but you make the other options look more enticing. And I don't think it's that difficult to make Florida and LSU looked more enticing than Nebraska in year one of Scott Frost. But then there's also the school of thought that they block him. They know him better than anybody else. And that would give your defense somewhat of an advantage because they've practiced against this guy every day. Staff knows his tendencies. They know what he likes to do. They know what he's not great at. They know what he excels at. And so that gives them a little bit of an advantage, maybe a lot of an advantage, because they know him. And if he does go somewhere where, you know, a Nebraska or a school like an Iowa, not Iowa, but a school where maybe the Buckeye defense tends to get overconfident, if the Buckeyes are going in to face Joe Burrow, they're going to be locked in because that's their guy. They're going to want to stop him on every snap. They're going to get fired up to play him. Just like Nick Bosa tweeted today, you know, I can't wait to sack you next year, or something to that effect. So all of these guys love him, but that love also makes them want to, in a competitive way. So I don't know that that there would be a need to block any destinations. And so far, it doesn't look like there are any blocks, but more will come out as people are talking. Tom back yet?
Yes.
I am back.
Hey, Tom, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Glad to join the podcast.
You don't think that? I know you don't think there should be any block. I know how you feel on that one, but do you think that there will be?
Do I think that they will try and block?
Yeah, block
from transferring somewhere.
Specific destination for Joe Burrow.
I would think not. I mean, I would certainly hope not. I think that they probably wouldn't, because that then just makes it a story that you're, you know, that you're keeping him from going somewhere. And I don't think that they'll do that. I think, first of all, it kind of makes you look scared if you do that. Like, what are you worried about? If he's, you know, you felt like he wasn't good enough to win the job. You weren't going to give him the job here, presumably. I mean, presumably that's what he was told, that he was not, at least not clearly the best quarterback on the roster. So, you know, now he's going somewhere else where the supporting cast is going to be not as good. So, you know, you're setting yourself up for a lot of stories about how you're scared to play him if you block him. So I don't think they're going to do it. I liked your analogy earlier about Woody Hayes steering kids to Notre Dame instead of Michigan. I think that's probably, there's plenty of ways to do that. And, you know, I don't think it's a coincidence that Emory Jones, when he left Ohio State, ended up at Florida this year. You know, that's Urban Meyer and Dan Mullen, and, you know, it's similar styles. And if you're a fit with one, you're probably a fit with another. I think that would be a pretty easy transition for Burrow. I think that would be a pretty easy thing for Mullen to pick up the phone and say, you know, what do you think of this kid? And Meyer to give him a good, you know, two thumbs up review. That seems like that would be the most logical place. I think the more I think about it, the most logical place for him to end up. And I think that I don't think that Ohio State's going to try and block a transfer. I would certainly hope not. And I think that you can do it in such a way that he doesn't end up, you know, you can try and help him make the right choice for him that also is a choice that avoids controversy and avoids you having to face him next year.
Can I play devil's advocate on something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, sure. I know when you say that they shouldn't be afraid of him, but what about the simple fact that here's a kid that knows just about every play in the playbook and knows all the, you know, whatever the cadences or the sideline stuff and all this stuff, the little nuances that might be able to help, say, if you went to a Nebraska, pick up on certain things in order to help their defense.
Well,
you can change signals and some play calls and that kind of stuff before then. And I think a lot of stuff is on film. the Ohio State offense from the last couple of years is on film. It's pretty well established what it has looked like in previous years. It's probably going to look a little different this year if it's Haskins and Martell now. So I don't think that's something you need to worry about. Honestly, you're setting yourself up to look like you're afraid of something if you block him from going to another school.
I also think
the talent gap between Ohio State and Nebraska right now is not such. Ohio State could have said, "Okay, we're going to run the ball off tackle on the right side of the line on this play," and they still would have beaten Nebraska by 35 points last year. Like the talent gap there, it's going to be a little closer because they've got a better coaching staff now, but there's still a pretty substantial talent gap there. So I don't. Even if it is Nebraska or Cincinnati, I don't think that that's something I would necessarily worry about this year.
I also think, Joe Burrow is going to be pretty busy preparing for Ohio State, not preparing the Nebraska defense for the Ohio State offense. He's going to be preparing the Nebraska offense for the Ohio State defense, and that's going to take. Did I say Nebraska? Wherever he goes, Oregon. But he's going to be preparing to play himself and put his offense in the best situation. And the convincing that one spot would be better than the other. Tom, remember, this is Urban Meyer, who basically oversigns by 3 or 4 or 5 every year and convinces players, you probably could have a better spot, a better shot to play somewhere else. And he doesn't technically, quote unquote, cut anybody, but he makes them realize that you have more opportunities somewhere else. If you would have that same sort of talk with Joe in terms of, like I said before, Florida has talent. It's the SEC East, so it's sort of like the Big Ten West in that regard, where anybody can win it, but you could be the guy that puts them over the top. And same thing at LSU. That's a place where you can really make your mark, and it's got years and years of recruiting built up. That's not something Nebraska has now. Nebraska has some really good receivers, but they don't have the defense that can. Do you really want to be the quarterback who is going to have to win 62 to 59 every week? There's going to be some of that in Scott Frost's system because of the up tempo, and we saw it last year with UCF all the time. All of the high scores that those his teams that were with the games with UCF, everything was just video game numbers on offense and defense. I think Urban Meyer has his ways of convincing, maybe the Jedi mind trick. You don't want to go to Nebraska. And then Joe Burrow's like, I don't want to go to Nebraska. And then you go to Florida. And that would be 2 quarterbacks that Meyer has now sent to Florida. And, at some point, in Trayvon Grimes, at some point, the Gators have to start, if they land Burrow, they need to start paying back. And be. But maybe it would be knocking Alabama out.
I don't think Ohio State wants any of their quarterbacks.
Do you want any of our? No, we don't. This isn't Go Fish, and I don't need any twos. Somebody asked me if this could split the locker room, and Tom, I don't know what's your thoughts on that, because the fact that it happens now, there's so much time to heal. So I don't think there's any fracturing that will be happening at any point in camp, because this is now Dwayne Haskins' team. There would be a split locker room perhaps during camp, during summer, anytime other than more opportunity for a split locker room than there is right now. Don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we talked about this months ago that they probably needed to try and have a quarterback kind of set coming out of spring ball, because then that kind of allows someone to take over the leadership role of the team. It's your offense. You don't have people second guessing you in the huddle. You don't have people second guessing you in the sideline as soon as you start throwing in 2 incompletions in a row. this will ultimately be better for team cohesion this fall, I would say, because you don't have the opportunity if Haskins comes out against TCU and throws an interception or two in the first and second quarter. Yeah, I mean, people on Twitter are going to be saying, "Oh, they should have let Burrow stick around," but you're not going to have players on the sideline saying that. They're going to be, no one's going to be turning and looking for Joe Burrow to come into the game because he's been gone for months at that point. I mean, if you go back to the 90s and the Joe Germain, Stanley Jackson teams, there was kind of a little bit of a locker room schism there between, the Jackson camp and the Germain camp and on some of those teams, I think. And, that can be, you don't want that kind of division in your locker room. You don't want, two different camps, in your offensive meeting rooms. You want to have everyone kind of pulling, all the football coaching cliches that people say. Everyone's got to be pulling the same way, rowing the boat the same direction.
This is in Minnesota.
And if you have one, yes, like Minnesota, yes. Another school whose quarterback's Ohio State doesn't want. If you have one leader going into the year, that solves a lot of, that eliminates, I think, a lot of your potential internal strife. Now, you're probably, we'll talk about this in a little bit. You're not just going to be playing the one quarterback. You're going to have Martell in there at some points. So, sure, that could end up being, that could end up turning into something. But, during fall camp and, during the start of the season, as long as Haskins plays reasonably well, I don't think you're going to have any kind of division there because there's, there is not that second guy who is, 1 and 1A. There are not those two guys there. Now it's just the one guy. Now it's Dwayne Haskins' team. Now it's his show, and that eliminates a lot of problems for you.
And it eliminates the confusion entirely. And the team knows who to follow. You're not half the teams about following one guy and the other half the other guy. As Urban Meyer says, it's 9 units strong, not 4.5. And this, even though it thins the depth chart a lot, it clears up much. I don't know. We've talked in the past. They didn't want to lose him because one, he's good. Two, you don't ever want to be down to just two healthy quarterbacks. But it sure clarifies the situation, and it leaves no doubt as to whose team this is, and it also allows Dwayne Haskins to continue to take that step and be the leader that he has believed himself to be. Now the rest of the team can, I don't know if there are holdovers on people who were still in Joe Burrow's camp, but now there is no more Joe Burrow's camp. So it all has to become Dwayne Haskins' camp, except for Tate Martell, who's like Survivor Man and just goes out by himself and can survive in the wild just by himself, who he can catch squirrels with his bare hands and throw them at deer and kill the deer and then eat the deer. And that's Tate Martell. That's nobody else.
Wouldn't the fact that Joe Burrow announced his decision to transfer, it was his choice, that would eliminate any kind of division in the locker room because he's the one that made that call? It's not like he got pushed out or anything.
Yeah, you would think. Tom, I don't know how you feel about it, but it's not. It was absolutely his choice because even though they were one over or two over, maybe one over, they were cutting.
Right. This was his choice. I think I think Urban could probably, if anyone asked, Urban could tell them what he told Burrow. And whatever it was, I mean, like we said earlier, he was not told, get out. He may have been told, we can't guarantee you the starting quarterback job. And I don't think there's anyone on the team that's going to find that outrageous. I think, all through spring ball, we kept being told no one was pulling away. They were very close. One guy had a little lead. Then the other guy would sort of catch up. I think that probably, we had a limited window into spring practice where we saw, little bits of drills, and then we saw the spring game, and from the little bit we saw, like, yeah, sure, they were probably about even. But it sounded, from everything we were told from everyone else, it sounded like it was pretty much even. So, as long as he wasn't told get out, and I'm sure that he was not, then I can't imagine anyone on the team having an issue with, it was, as Shannon said, his choice. So, I don't think that that's something that is going to be a real divisive thing in that locker room. It's for sure. It is a huge net negative in terms of the depth chart and in terms of their, if Haskins goes down this year, then it's a real problem. But in terms of just off-field, soft concerns kind of stuff, locker room stuff, I think it's probably a positive that the situation's resolved.
And I know 2014 was the example of why you need three quarterbacks. But I will say this on a very positive note: if the injuries that happened in 2014 happen the same time they happen this year, the Buckeyes would be totally fine, because they could lose Dwayne Haskins in camp, and then you still have Tate Martell, to step in as a redshirt freshman, and lead Ohio State 11-1 record. And then if he gets injured in the Michigan game, Matthew Baldwin will be fine by then. So I don't know why people are worried. As long as things happen exactly as they did in 2014, the timing will work out perfectly. And I think people just need to remember that and hold on to that, and maybe pray a little bit about that. And then if the worst happens, maybe it'll just happen in good timing. And then they'll be totally fine. And Matthew Baldwin will lead Ohio State to a national title as a true freshman, which is pretty much what Tate Martell would have done last year if he had the opportunity. And of course.
So what I'm hearing from you is that the biggest problem for Ohio State the last few years is not enough quarterback injuries.
The proof is in the pudding. I mean, the 1 year they have everybody get hurt, what happened? National title. A little bit healthy, what happens? Nothing. So
it's science. You can't question science.
Injury science. It's right there. And so now we move back to Dwayne Haskins, who will be healthy and fine, and strike all of that injury talk from the record. The Buckeye fans now get the offense that they wanted from Cardale Jones. That 2014 postseason offense. Without the albatross of Ed Warner and Tim Beck. They have this offense, this drop back passing game, this downfield passing game, with offensive coordinators who want it and have taught it and would seem to be more in tune to having a good offense than the guys who tried to do it in 2015. And when was it when we talked? Was it like when we talked to the running backs and Mike Weber and J.K. Dobbins? We're talking then like this is going to be a good offense for us with Dwayne Haskins. And there wasn't a lot of talk about Joe Burrow back in those days, but this is something that the team is looking forward to. I think fans are looking forward to it as well. And the fact that it's Kevin Wilson and Ryan Day might be the big help or the biggest part of all of this.
Right. Those are guys that have run successful, sort of pass-heavy spread offenses in other places. And, it's not going to be quite the gong show that it was in 2015, where it was guys kind of trying to figure it out and people who hadn't really done it before trying to juggle two quarterbacks and deal with a situation that was probably not handled great between Barrett and Jones in terms of not having a clear number one and number two until basically the day of the Virginia Tech game. So, yeah, I think they're set up for success this year. What you talked about when we talked to J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber and some of those guys, that was right after they all decided to come back. We talked to at least Weber that day. I remember talking to him about, how excited he was about playing with a quarterback who might not run as much and how that really opened up carries for the running backs and, some of the wide receivers who'd come back. I think, maybe Paris Campbell and Terry McLaurin and Johnny Dixon, talking about, how, you might have more of an opportunity for downfield passing game, which is, this is all stuff that I think the players have been sort of hoping for a couple of years. And, if you've been on Twitter or been on the Ozone Forum or anywhere else online, there have been Ohio State fans who've been hoping for that as well. So, this is the year you're going to get what you've been looking for, and the pieces are there for this to be a very, very explosive, exciting team. I mean, when we talked about them, about the pros and cons of the two quarterbacks, I think we said basically the Dwayne Haskins season has a higher ceiling but a lower floor than the Burrow ceiling. The Burrow season is what we've seen the past few years. It's 10-2, 11-1. They're going to be good. They're going to run a sort of, they're going to run the familiar offense. You're going to get what you get. They're going to be able to out-talent most teams on their schedule. And you're going to kind of know what you're getting coming in. This season's a little bit more of a mystery because if it's good, it could be really, really good. It could be good in a way that we have not seen at Ohio State in quite a while. But if it doesn't work, it could really go kind of pear-shaped. Now, pear-shaped is like 9-3. That's it could be a disaster, but an Ohio State disaster. So that's like a 9-3 season. But yeah, I think the ceiling's real high this year with this offense. I am very intrigued to see what a Haskins Martell combo offense can do.
You say an Ohio State disaster, but that's 9-3. That's also what Michigan pleasantry. Like, hey, 9-3.
The Michigan median, right there, 9-3.
We'll talk probably next week's show will be all about Dwayne Haskins and what it means for him. But right now, he has to wake up tomorrow as a different person. I know he said in the spring that he's acting like a starting quarterback until he's told differently. But now there's no more acting. Now you are the starting quarterback, and you have to perform like it off the field, getting teammates to the WAC for workouts, for throwing it, all of those different aspects of leader. And so when he wakes up in the morning, he has to be, I think he needs to be a different guy than he was yesterday. And just continue to be that guy all the way through into January, because this is his team now. He has to take ownership even more than he was before, because he couldn't take full ownership before because it wasn't completely his. And now that it is, he needs to operate as JT Barrett would. And the good thing is he got to see JT Barrett, how he did it, and he knows how it's done, how the coaches want to see it done. And I think he'll, I would expect him to step right in and do pretty well there. But now that the stress of the quarterback, there's a new stress for Urban Meyer, and that's the depth chart. Now, I don't know that he never seemed stressed about the 2015 quarterback battle, even though everybody else was. But the stress now is that depth chart and how that will impact Tate Martell, who we know there are packages for where he said they told him he would play this year. If he doesn't win the starting job, he'll still play. And we've talked about this before, and I think I sound maybe on opposite ends here. But with him being the backup, I don't know that they can run those packages as freely as they wanted to before. I still think they need to do some of that because you still have to get your backup quarterback experience. But I don't know how much they can set aside these packages for him unless they get deeper by September. So, where are you? Have you changed at all? Or where are you on how Martell in his special packages?
I'm sort of changing my mind a little bit on that. I still think we see it, even if they don't land a grad transfer or something like that, and they do go into the fall with just Haskins and Martell and, Matthew Baldwin, who's dinged up, and then that's it as far as scholarship quarterbacks. So even if you're going into the fall with 2.5 healthy scholarship quarterbacks, I still think you're going to see that Martell package just because they have to keep him happy at this point too. And if he's been told he's going to play, he's going to play. So, and I think there is a role for him on this team, even if it is 6 to 8 snaps a game in short yardage or goal line type situations. I think they're going to find a way to get him there. But what I think you may see is a little bit less of that than maybe they had thought before, and a little bit more of him in, blowouts and getting him into games earlier to try and get him more reps, so that if Haskins does go down, you're not throwing someone in completely cold with no reps. I mean, like they did with Haskins last year, where they pulled JT Barrett before halftime of the UNLV game and got Haskins more than half of the game. It would not shock me if they tried to do that. At least get Martell like half against, say, Tulane or Oregon State or someone like that, where you want to get him some reps. You may not be running him as much. You may be trying to keep him kind of, you may try and keep him kind of safe and not have him take too many hits, but also get more reps just reading defenses, just being out on the field, seeing what teams are doing, watching how teams try to defend him, that kind of thing. So I think he may see more action, but fewer of the, quote unquote kind of package kind of things, where if he's going to be running the ball, he's going to be taking hits, and that's where you're kind of in danger of suffering an injury, which they really can't afford at this point.
Yeah, as much as they would like to protect him, you can't entirely protect him, because you also have to prepare him. So it's a tough situation to be in, where you don't ever want to be down to just one quarterback. But if Haskins goes down, Martell has to be able and accustomed to playing. It can't be the first time he's out there. He has to be confident what the job is to do it. And I agree with you. I think they would. It wouldn't just be his packages. You're going to have to run the Ohio State offense maybe a little bit more than he would have before, instead of just being like the hood ornament, as Urban Meyer likes to say. You're going to have to be more than that, a more complete quarterback. So you can't. There's no bubble wrap, but if you're not running him constantly, then you are protecting him. Like you're saying, you are protecting him from getting hit every time, because when he runs the ball, he's most likely going to get hit. If you throw it, there's a good chance that you won't. He has to play, but I think it is the way they use him has changed a little bit. Unless they can bring it to not just to make the coaching staff feel better, but he still needs to run the Ohio State offense, because he's the next guy in. He can't just be a package guy. But maybe he plays a little bit more if there's a grad transfer there who just gives them a little bit more reassurance. But on Tuesday, I went through and I was looking at possible grad transfers, and there's not a lot of guys out there. Now there's still going to be more. Was just added today, but finding somebody like Joe Burrow, it's going to be very difficult for Ohio State, because they need to find somebody who's good enough but doesn't have to play. And in a Venn diagram, I don't know if those two circles really meet all that much. Looking at these names, I found 6 pretty quickly. One of them was some kid from either Indiana State or Eastern Kentucky, and I'm looking through to see where, and nobody knows where he is. And I look at his Twitter page, and he tweeted in December, happy to announce that I'm transferring to the Colorado College of Mines. And if you're going to the College of Mines, you're not good enough to play at Ohio State. But this is how thin the graduate transfer market is right now. That I'm looking at FCS guys to see if because maybe those guys would want to take the step up for an opportunity to be a Buckeye. But there's not a lot of guys out there, and there's a couple of interesting names like the Iowa State Jacob Park. Now he's had issues. Marijuana. He was supposed to be suspended for failing a drug test for marijuana last year at Iowa State, but he took like a leave of absence for health reasons because he had a lot of stuff. I don't know if that's something that Ohio State would be interested in getting involved with. There's a Clemson transfer, Tucker Israel, who is Tate Martell-ish. If that gives you an idea, he's like a 6-foot dude who was a highly rated 4-star dual threat quarterback who's really only played, I think he's thrown 2 passes, but he's got 2 years of eligibility. I don't know if they'd be interested in getting somebody with 2 years of eligibility, or maybe they would because they don't know if they'll be able to get quarterbacks in the 2019 class, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a bit. But Tom, do you see any fits? Do you with the guys that I wrote about today? It's not a big market.
No, you've kind of missed the heart of the grad transfer season. I mean, we've seen a lot of these guys already go. I mean, Wilton Speight went from Michigan to UCLA. One of the guys who might have been a good fit in that kind of Venn diagram that you were talking about was the kid from East Carolina who was going to transfer to Alabama, and go there knowing I'm probably going to be the second or third string quarterback, but I just want to be on a bigger stage. And then he ended up changing his mind. He went to Washington State instead because he has the opportunity. He was going to, he may get to start this year because they had the Tyler Hiltinski tragedy up there, and lost Luke Falk after last year. So they have a starting quarterback opening there. So he may end up starting there, but he really said he was going there just to learn under Mike Leach for a year and then set himself up as a coach, down the line. So, I mean, that's the type of guy that you would like to get, but he's gone. He's already going to Washington State, so he's off the market too. So, of the list that you posted, I mean, I think you do want someone who's just here for a year. You want someone who's coming in like an Andrew Dockich on the basketball team to just kind of come in and just paper over that hole for a year where you're not, you don't necessarily want Andrew Dockich here for 3 years. He's now, ironically now going to be, I guess, a grad assistant coach, so he probably will be here for 3 years, but you don't want him on your active roster for 3 years. You just need him to kind of paper over the hole in the wall for a year, and then you'll get a more solid solution to fill that spot. So Jordan Davis, maybe. I mean, the guy he played for Louisiana Lafayette, whichever. I think it's Louisiana Lafayette. It's the one that just calls itself Louisiana now, even though it really is Louisiana Lafayette. I mean, like you said, stylistically, he's a little more mobile than some of the other guys, so maybe he's a better fit for the Ohio State offense. But he lost his starting job at Louisiana. So if you can't hold a starting job in the Sun Belt, you're probably not going to, if you come to Ohio State, I don't think you're coming to Ohio State with the expectation you're going to be the starter here. But, come here, play a year, and set yourself up for, maybe some success. Maybe if he's got an eye on coaching, maybe, the Urban Meyer recommendation, sets you up the same way that a year under Mike Leach maybe sets up the guy who transferred to Washington State. He didn't seem like a bad opportunity. Or the guy, J.J. Cosentino from Florida State, who was a 4-star kid from Pittsburgh. That might be a fit geographically if he's from Western Pennsylvania, come back here, play kind of close to home. He didn't really play at Florida State, so, you probably don't have an expectation that you're going to come here and start. So, maybe he comes and you just need a warm body, basically. You just want one extra person who, break glass in case of emergency. And, maybe you get kind of a John O'Korn kind of production out of him, and that's not great, but it's probably better than than having to turn to a walk-on, which, you would really prefer not to be down to that point, because then once you get to the walk-on, then behind the walk-on is the not as good walk-on, and it gets pretty ugly pretty fast. So, yeah, I think they should make a pretty good push to get someone, almost anyone who is a scholarship quarterback from a FBS type school, especially a Power 5 type school, or the kid from Louisiana. Like any of them, I think, really give you just a little bit of peace of mind. If you get down to transfer quarterback who lost his job in the Sun Belt, you're probably not going to win the national championship at that point anyway, but maybe that keeps the season from careening completely off the rails.
And then there's still Corey Curtis, who walked on, who had, full ride scholarship offers at other places. But like you said, with being down to a guy who lost a job or couldn't keep a job in the Sun Belt, once you're down there, third, fourth quarterback. Not everybody is Ohio State 2014. And remember, that third quarterback is in the NFL right now. So it's not like he was terrible. He was really good, and they had the depth they needed. Right now, that depth is just taking a hit because obviously Joe Burrow is gone. But if you can get to, let's see, Matthew Baldwin had tore his ACL in December. That's usually 9-10 months at least. So maybe he's good to go in October or November, and maybe at that point they would go ahead and burn his red shirt because he can just red shirt in 2019 if need be, because you'd still have Dwayne Haskins and Tate Martell and whoever else you're bringing in the 2019 class. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him play if he's able to, and they need him to, and then you just redshirt him in 2019 and get him back to the 5-year plan that he probably had anyway. But that then takes us to the 2019 recruiting. And Tom, you wrote about this on Tuesday. Going back to the whole open secret about Joe Burrow leaving, it seems like with the offers, more offers going out, or at least one more offer, the Michigan State commit, I would say Urban Meyer was told maybe a few days ago that Joe Burrow was definitely leaving. Do we equate the offer with the news that Joe Burrow is leaving?
The timing sure seems to fit nicely, doesn't it? I mean, this is sort of like everyone assumed Joe Burrow was going to transfer because the timing fit so nicely that he was going to be graduating in May, and then it would fit great. And then Haskins steps right in and it all works out and Burrow gets to go somewhere to start. And everyone thought, well, the timing is just, that doesn't necessarily mean, but boy, the timing sure works out great. This is kind of the same thing. Like, if Burrow announced it on Tuesday and he graduated on Sunday, I'm going to guess he did not have that conversation with Urban Meyer 5 minutes before he tweeted that out today. I'm going to guess he had that conversation a few days ago. He had probably made the decision a little while ago. I mean, I certainly would think that it probably is not a coincidence that right around the time that Joe Burrow probably told them that he was leaving, lo and behold, another offer goes out, because now you have another hole in your quarterback room that you've got to fill. And, I think the assumption at this point, certainly the most likely scenario is that they get Grant Gunnell, the 4-star quarterback from Houston, from St. Pius X. He is a big school Texas quarterback. He's considered a pro-style quarterback, but if you watch his highlights, he's mobile enough that he can, he's at least Dwayne Haskins style mobile, if not a little better than that. He looks like he'd be a pretty good fit for Ohio State. He is, all the crystal ball picks are trending towards Ohio State on him. He's supposed to announce in a month. I think it would be a pretty big surprise at this point if he did not end up in the Ohio State class. But the question is, if Haskins has a great year this year, the 2019 NFL draft class is pretty shallow at quarterback. You don't have the, Josh Rosen and Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson that you had this year. Next year's quarterback class looks like it's going to be not nearly as strong. So if Haskins has a great year this year, He's got the size. He has the arm that he will be the type of player that NFL teams are drooling over, who's going to show out at the combine. And if he's got a good year of starting under his belt, it's possible he could jump to the NFL. So if Haskins jumps to the NFL, then next year you have 2 starting quarterbacks returning. You have 2 scholarship quarterbacks returning. You have Martell and you have Baldwin, and that's it. So you really probably need to take 2 quarterbacks this year. You generally want 1 at least per season, and maybe they take maybe Gunnell commits next month, and then they've got 1, and then you kind of see whether it looks like Haskins is going to go, and you take a second one later in the cycle. But I think they are certainly on alert that's something that could very well happen, and they may want to take 2 anyway, just to make sure you don't get in a situation where you only have 3 scholarship quarterbacks next year if something happens to one of them, or if someone transfers or someone gets hurt or whatever else. You want to make sure you've got a good full room there. That's not a position where you want to mess around and have too shallow of a depth chart. So yeah, I think it's not a coincidence, the timing there, that right around the time that Burrow probably told them, hey, I'm going somewhere else, that some more offers went out to quarterbacks, and they had a guy who's committed to Wisconsin came in and visited this week. I mean, he was just in town for a camp, but I think they're reconnecting with some people that maybe they haven't talked with in a little while, just to sort of see how everyone's doing, and hey, if you haven't forgotten about us, we're still here.
Yeah, the good thing is with the 2 signing days, you can sign Grant Gunnell in December and then go get another. They would have taken 2 last year. They didn't have the room, and Henry Jones was told that there was no room. But what you may need also is to get another Matthew Baldwin type who is okay being the second quarterback in the class, and that's not always easy to do. You've got to find somebody who, they always say, well, anywhere you go, you're gonna have to compete for a job anywhere you go. But most guys don't make it any more difficult than it's already going to be by committing, quarterback committing where there is already a quarterback in the class. So it's almost like the whole grad transfer situation where you have to find somebody who's really good, but those guys who are really good aren't necessarily going to want to be the second guy in the class. But you'll still have a month and a half to go find the second guy if you can get that first guy. Real quick, I wanted to go back to the grad transfer stuff, because I was thinking, how Urban Meyer always has lists of assistant coaches on his radar. He followed Alex Gritch. He's followed this guy and that guy. I am fairly certain he's done the same thing for quarterbacks, knowing Joe Burrow could be leaving. He's at least had his staff working on it, looking at it well before spring camp even began, I would think, just to be prepared with names, with research, with all of those things. Not that they're going to contact anybody, but they have to have names and possibilities. So I would be pretty surprised if they aren't well on their way to zeroing in on somebody. You had mentioned Andrew Dockett, and I was just thinking, just imagine, for where Aaron Kraft, his college basketball just came to an end, and Ohio State now needs a quarterback. And he has 1 year of eligibility remaining, and wouldn't that just have Aaron Kraft be your number 3 quarterback at Ohio State? Something that everybody wanted to see him be at Ohio State, including Urban Meyer, to have that guy. Now you would probably have people rooting for injuries. They'd be booing, Dwayne Haskins will get sacked and he's down. He's staying down, and people start getting excited. And then he gets up and you have people booing. But I think it would have been pretty cool to see Aaron Kraft at quarterback. But he was born a few years too early, I guess. It would not be cool to see Andrew Dockett at quarterback. Shannon, is it time for listener questions?
I can't imagine a quarterback room with Tate Martell and Aaron Kraft in it at the same time. Ohio State fans might just explode with love.
There would be plenty to talk about, and then we get the quarterback controversy that we crave so much.
Yeah, but would people be able to enjoy his rosy cheeks through a helmet?
Good question. You just have to get the cameras right in there. You zoom in there, which I'm sure they would. And plus, he would only, when he's on the side.
All right. Yeah, you want
to the listener question?
All right. The first one here is from Eric Miles RE. My question is, which position group you guys think is most happy with Haskins as quarterback one? Wide receivers, running backs, or O-line?
My answer on this one is the running backs, because they are going to get the ball more. And I'm sure that the wide receivers are happy too. The reason where everybody's excited to see this offense is because it's a more downfield passing attack. None of these wide receivers have proven themselves as downfield receivers. So, yeah, they might be excited and are looking forward to it. But now they're going to have to prove themselves. And I'm sure they're looking forward to it, but I don't think they're looking forward to it as much as the running backs, knowing that there's now 150 carries available for.
Yeah, absolutely. The running backs are absolutely the answer here, because they have a whole new. I mean, that's Mike Weber talked about it in January. That I think that was probably part of the conversation that helped get him back. Is there can be more carries if it's not a running quarterback centered offense. So yeah, I don't think there's a question that the running backs are number one. Wide receivers would be number two on that list. I mean, I think they want a chance to prove themselves. This is kind of a put up or shut up year now for this wide receiver unit, who they have not made plays downfield, and now you've kind of got your control seasons with JT Barrett. Now you're gonna run your experiment. We're gonna try a different quarterback. You're gonna have a stronger armed quarterback, potentially a more accurate downfield passer quarterback. So now you're gonna find out, was it the quarterback all along, and these receivers have been good and they've been hampered by the quarterback, or is this, are the downfield passing issues really a result, at least somewhat on the shoulders of those wide receivers? Offensive line, this may be the PC answer, but every time we've talked to offensive linemen about the blocking for a running quarterback versus a passing quarterback, they all kind of say, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't make much of a difference to them. I think they like it when they have guys behind them that can, guys like a J.K. Dobbins who can take a little hole and make it into a big play. But, I think of those three groups, I think the offensive linemen probably care the least that it's Haskins versus Burrow, and the running backs are probably by far number one on the happiest list that it's going to be a more running back centric offense probably in the run game.
Yeah, the offensive line, their answer, whether you're asking about running backs or quarterbacks or whatever, it's like, we don't care. We just block the guy in front of us. That's where their concern is. And they'll even say we didn't even know who the quarterback was in at that time because there are no huddles. So you're just getting to the line and you guys are listening to Billy Price or waiting for the snap. So they've got other things to worry about than the quarterbacks, and they're never too concerned about what's going on around them. They're more concerned about what's going on in front of them.
This one's from Get Yo Rocks Off. What happens if all three QBs go down? Who should be next, and how screwed would we be?
Pretty screwed. I think, Tom, do they go with the Wildcat or the walk-on? That's the walk-on gives you a threat of the pass, but do you want your Curtis throwing the ball? We saw what, like the 2004 Alamo Bowl, when Zwick went down, it was Ted Ginn and Ted Ginn. And now I don't know if Ohio State has its head again at Wildcat. Maybe you do the J.K. Dobbins did it in high school. He wants to do it this year too. Demarion McCall could do it, but I guess it just depends on how it happens, who it happens against. But it would depend on the situation. I think whether they go with the walk-on or the Wildcat.
They went to the Wildcat in 2004 because it was the Alamo Bowl, so who cares? And also it was the last game of the year. And they went to, if you don't remember, Troy Smith was suspended for taking $500 from a booster. And then Justin Zwick pulled his hamstring in the Alamo Bowl. And they had Todd Beckman there, but they wanted to redshirt Todd Beckman, so they didn't want to tear the red shirt off him for a meaningless bowl game. So they just threw Ginn in to just be the Wildcat quarterback. But that was the Alamo Bowl, and it was, I don't remember what point of the game that was, but they just completely murdered Oklahoma State in that game. That game ended up 33-7. And I think they were up a decent amount at that point anyway, so it kind of didn't matter. If that happens in, if it's like mid-November, or it's, the Michigan game, or it's the Big Ten championship game, then you're probably putting Corey Curtis in there because you probably, at least somewhat, because you can't just completely live and die with a Wildcat-only offense in multiple games spanning a couple weeks or a month when teams have time to scout you out. Like when you see teams run that kind of like surprise wing T kind of offense because they're just out of quarterbacks, it's generally a crappy bowl game like the Alamo Bowl, or Baylor did that one year against North Carolina in, the Independence Bowl or something like that. And they just ran this like wing T offense, and it was an absolute masterpiece. They just pounded North Carolina for like 600 yards. But if it's mid-October, I don't think you're going to do that. I think you're going to put Corey Curtis in, and you're going to have to do something with him, or someone else who's kind of a semi-legitimate passer. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Curtis. I don't think he played in the spring game, did he? I don't think he actually got any snaps in the spring game, right?
Yeah, I don't remember seeing him. And what I can say about Corey Curtis is, anytime we write a story about the quarterbacks, there's a commenter in the article who will always mention Corey can throw the ball 80 yards. He's got a really strong arm. So, from what I've learned, Corey Curtis, he's a good dude. He's really just outgoing, friendly guy. He's a big guy, like 6'4", 230. Apparently can throw the ball 80 yards. You would need that threat against the defense. But it just depends on when and how and who. But he's a redshirt freshman at this point, so he knows the offense. You don't ever want to get to that situation, obviously. And the good thing is you still have the running game, you still have the weapons around him. And what would their record, Tom, if Corey Curtis is your starting quarterback at Ohio State, with this schedule, can he take them 8-4? I mean, that doesn't seem outrageous.
I mean, are we saying he's starting from day one?
Yeah.
I think if he's starting from day one, they make a bowl game. Goodness, they made a bowl game with Joe Bauserman as their starting quarterback. I mean, anything is possible. I don't know that first of all, the talent surrounding him this year would be far better than the 2011 team. And even if he's not quite as good a quarterback as Bauserman was, you're going to beat Oregon State. You're going to beat Tulane. You're going to go 500 in the Big Ten at least. I could see them winning 8 games with him. And I say that with virtually no experience with Curtis, other than seeing him throw a little bit across the field at practice a few times, and sort of a general sense that I think people in the program like him. I think that, right? Is that kind of the sense? Not that we talk about Corey Curtis a whole lot with Urban Meyer, but I feel like we've sort of gotten the sense that they think he can play, and that he's, as a fourth quarterback, you don't ever want to get down to your fourth quarterback, but as fourth quarterbacks go, I think he's probably okay, right?
Exactly. Now, I don't, you look at it like Michigan, where they have a whole bunch of scholarship quarterbacks, and maybe they have a better situation. But I think there's enough where he could do well enough that you wouldn't just have to run the ball 65 times, even though it probably could against half of their schedule. What's up next year?
All right, the next one, Chip, just going to tell you it got tabled because the rule got tabled. So let's go with Schadenfreude. If Baldwin surpasses Martell, do you think Tate will leave?
Well, this is sort of, that's the way things go. When the younger guy passes you by, then that you know that, well, you're going to have to go somewhere else if you want to play. What I think is maybe different with this situation is that Tate Martell may be the only person who thinks he has an NFL future as a quarterback. He could have an NFL future as a slot receiver. So I don't necessarily think that if he gets beat out, he transfers. I think if Matthew Baldwin would at some point beat him out, I think that would be his invitation to transition a la Braxton Miller and become a guy that is a reliable weapon that you're relied upon. H-back at Ohio State it's a marquee position, and that gets heavily involved with the offense, more so than you would as a backup quarterback. Now, there would need to be other quarterbacks on the roster. You're not going to want to get into the situation that you are right now you would move somebody at quarterback to get yourself down to two or three, two healthy quarterbacks. I don't know, Tom, how do you feel? I don't think he would. I shouldn't say I don't think he would transfer. I think because his future may be somewhere else other than quarterback, he's less likely. But like Joe Burrow, he wants to play quarterback.
That's not a bad point. Yeah, that's not a bad point. I mean, I guess one of the questions is, when is this going to happen? I mean, Baldwin is presumably going to be hurt most of this year. Not back until late in the year, so he's not going to beat him out this this summer, this fall. He's you're getting into end of the season where maybe at the end of the season next spring ball maybe he jumps ahead of him in the quarterback line, but Baldwin is not much of a runner. Baldwin is more of a pocket guy. So again, there's probably a role for Martell on the team, even if it's the same basic role he has this year, where you're going to take snaps, you're going to be a goal line guy, you're going to be a short yardage guy, you're going to be kind of the running quarterback to accentuate the passing quarterback. And maybe it's more of a 50-50 split at that point if you have a little more depth in your quarterback room. So I don't think, anything's possible. If he loses the job, if he feels like it should be his job, if Haskins leaves and then you come out of next spring and it's Martell versus Baldwin and Baldwin beats him out, then yeah, maybe you leave at that point. But I think there are a whole lot of different ways that they could that he could stay here and have a very productive career, even if he's not the full-time QB1, as soon as Dwayne Haskins goes.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's more likely to stay because there are always things that you can do, and even if it's not H-back, it's that quarterback package that we're always talking about, the red zone stuff, the Tim Tebow type of thing that he could become a valuable part of the Ohio State offense, to where he doesn't feel like you're not even compartmentalized. You are a part of the offense, and this is your role, and we rely on you to make this team the very best it can be. So, yeah, even though he's been committed to 15 different schools in high school, and I know people have sort of expected him to transfer even before he enrolled. So they have doubts that a guy who is 5'10", 5'9", listed at 5'11", can become a quarterback in major college football. But he's got plenty of skills, and we'll see those put to use this season. Anything else? I think those are all the questions that Shannon, are there any housekeeping things we need to touch on?
No, I just want to congratulate James Paxton from Seattle for no-hitting the Blue Jays. Not only does LeBron James make Toronto cry, but apparently so does real Canadian.
I don't understand. Tom, it's not. What's the big deal about beating up Canada?
It's fun to do. It's like Michigan.
Yeah, I mean it's not hockey, right? If it's not hockey, then if it's not hockey or curling, I don't know. I mean, this is a country that thinks ham is bacon. So what does it even mean?
Exactly. I mean, yeah, I don't. Let's brag about stuff that's worth bragging about.
Well, Michael Jordan never embarrassed Canada the way LeBron James has. So when you keep, alluding to how great Michael Jordan was and so much greatness better than LeBron James, just want to point out he didn't embarrass the whole country.
Well,
that's right. No words. Move on.
Tell that to
Let's close down the show.
All right. Tell that to Angola. Tell that to Yugoslavia. I don't know if Yugoslavia was a country in 1992, but yeah, I mean, obviously, and we'll just end it. Obviously, Michael Jordan is better than LeBron James. So thank you everybody for listening to this episode. Make sure you check out the rest of the shows on the Ozone Radio Network. Shannon, you had a Silver Bullets podcast today, or on Tuesday. Buckeyes in the draft, and obviously the Slipcast guys every Monday. Us, we're here every Wednesday. Check them all out. See what you think. Let us know on iTunes. This show is kind of rough, so don't review this one. Next week, maybe the Dwayne Haskins stuff will be much smoother and worth reviewing. But thanks for listening, and we will talk to you guys next week.
We could steal a car.